Well, there are growing calls for the creation of protective zones around politicians' constituency offices to shield MPs and their staff from threatening behavior. Joining us now with more is former Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I mean, you know very well, the dangers of some of these individuals who have a bone to pick with politicians, and it's getting a bit scary for many out there. What are you calling for? What would you like to see?
Getting scary is putting it mildly, unfortunately. Political violence has been going through the roof. The Sergeant at Arms who's responsible for security on the Hill has reported an 800% increase in the last 5 years. We're talking about more death threats, more protests in front of public figures' homes, and assaults. And I've got some very direct experience, and my family has some very direct experience with this. Just last night, my friend and colleague, Minister Mark Miller, who's responsible for the immigration portfolio, had his constituency office completely demolished. And that is a direct threat to him, his staff, and his constituents. And it's absolutely unacceptable, which is why I'm calling for protective zones. What would this do? It would give police new authorities to enforce a safe perimeter around constituency offices and the private residences of those who we elect to be our voices in government. Because if we don't do that, it will embolden more political violence, and it will obviously be harder to attract and retain good people in politics. And we need good people in politics. So we need to have those authorities. We need more police resources, and I've been a champion of that, as you know. And we also, as politicians, need to look in the mirror about how we debate the big issues. And by doing these three things, I think we can keep our elected representatives safe.
And you made a very important point. It's not just the MPs who are being the targeted of this violence. We saw that video of you being spat on recently, but it also heavily impacts not only the families, but also your staff members who are also being threatened as well. We've been seeing many examples of this. What's been the reaction to your calls for this increased security so far?
Well, certainly I've always felt that the police are receptive to step up, but they do need additional personnel and resources, which is why I'll continue to be outspoken about this. And I don't think we have the luxury of thinking about political violence just occurring somewhere else. I mean, this comes against the backdrop of the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. It's chilling and horrifying, but my message is that this is occurring here as well, and we've got to make sure that we put those authorities in place to deter those who would try to intimidate, harass, threaten, or even assault politicians. And yes, I've had that happen to me, and it's difficult. It's difficult to keep a level head in that situation. I had a lot of people reach out to me saying, you're the bigger man for doing it, but I saw that the alternative would be much worse, which is that people get hurt or potentially even more deadly than that. So. Look, this is a tough time. Canadians are hurting, but we've got to make sure that the people who are in our elected offices are able to do the job safely and securely.
Marco, what do you think is driving this political violence and this, the sentiment from so many people who are willing to maybe pick up a bunch of rocks and throw it at the Prime Minister or spit on MPs like yourself? Or what do you think is driving this behavior?
Well, I think a few things. Extreme rhetoric, for one, feeding conspiracies and disinformation, too. And I think that the work that you and other media do as a bulwark against those types of conspiracy theories and being fact checkers so Canadians can be informed is vitally important. I think we need to engage social media platforms because right now they are not safe, not only for politicians, but I think Canadians themselves will go on to platforms like X or elsewhere and see the threats and experience the threats themselves. So we've got to make sure that they're more proactive in preserving evidence which could be used to enforce against those who break the law. So there are a number of factors that I think that are feeding into this frenzy. And I think leadership requires the right temperament, which is not to say that we pull punches when it comes to the debate. We need to make sure that we're doing the right things by Canadians so that the cost of living comes down, so that we can tackle the challenges around climate change, so that our communities are safe. Let's have those debates, but let's steer clear of the types of casting of personal aspersions and using language that is not based on fact. I think that's a big part of the reason why we've seen political violence go up, and we've got to reverse that trend.
And I think you also made a very good point that we need good people in politics, but you also have to wonder, Marco, how many people have decided, you know what, I'm not going to enter politics simply because of the backlash that we see from the public and also the political violence, harassment, intimidation that we're seeing. And I'm wondering what your thoughts on, how many really good, MPs or MPPs or local councillors could be out there, but they're not going to get into politics because of the way things are playing out.
Or young Canadians, for that matter. And, I've always been an optimistic individual. And one of the reasons why I got into politics was to make a difference. And it is tough to recruit. I can tell you very personally, and I've got some friends who are leaving politics because they just don't want to have to worry about their safety or the safety of their families. And I, speak with staff. I mean, I remember one incident where I was leaving an event where staffers escorted me out of the perimeter because they were worried about my safety. They should never have to be put in that situation, ever. And unfortunately, they are. So I do think that if we want to be able to attract and retain good people, that there have to be some, baseline protections when it comes to safety and security of the arena. And that's why I'm using my voice right now. Having the experience as a former federal prosecutor, serving in the public safety portfolio, I believe I bring some unique insights into this discussion and will continue to speak out so that politics can be a safe place to work as well.
I think it's a very important discussion that needs to be had. Glad we're able to have this here on CP24 and looking forward to seeing what kind of changes will be made moving forward. MP Marco Mendicino, we appreciate your time. Thank you.